like to call the Village Board meeting to order. If you would stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, welcome everyone, and welcome everyone watching at home. Madam Clerk, if you'd call the roll.
Trustee Carter.
Present.
Trustee Mariscal.
Present.
Trustee Kazam.
Present.
Trustee Gett.
Present.
Trustee Weisenberg.
Present.
Trustee DeVore.
Present.
Okay, nice to see everyone. We would be at item 4, approval of the minutes from the public hearing for TIF number 2, amendment and Board of Trustees meeting on October 15, 2019. I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, on to announcements. Just a quick announcement that we did finish our third in a series of neighborhood meetings last week, and probably had about 25 or 30 people turn out at the library. Thanks to everyone who showed up and all the village staff for helping to organize those. Next we'd be at comments from the audience. Any comments from the audience tonight? Going once?
Twice.
Going twice? Comments from the audience are closed. We'll move right on to trustee reports. The first is Public Works. Trustee Carter.
Okay, I think I have several updates. Okay, so one of them is, and Dave and Mike can chime in if they want, is to give an update on the VFW drainage issue update. I think the only thing that really is updated is that the Public Works, Mike and his staff, put a plate over the top of the sinking hole that they have. But other than that, we haven't heard anything back from VFW.
No, we just, from my understanding, they just completed the work behind D's Auto Body, which is on
That's
our...
next.
Okay.
What's next?
That's all the, okay, it's the all drainage. It's all in one. I thought that's all you were going to cover.
Sorry.
Okay, no, go ahead.
Well, no, it's like, it's got like 4 bullet points. So the next thing is the work behind D's Automotive. It's pretty much done. Mike has a few things that he wants to get completed to make it officially completed. And then the Park District started on the work on the property parallel to the Rock Island Trail, and I do believe that that's almost done. And that's up towards D's and where we've been working. And then want to remind everybody that Mark Goff's retirement party is December 2nd at 11:30 here at the Village Hall. If you can make it, I would suggest calling in and talk to Sarah or Stephanie, let them know that you're going to be here. And then anything else you guys got an update on? We did give the... Okay.
Yeah, the nightmare for well 11 is finally coming to an end. I dropped off my first sample for well 11 today, so once that gets approved, that well 11 will be in service and be up to use. And then the other thing I have is our new employee, Eric Quinn, who replaced Mark. He is officially off probation, and he is he's got a CDL license. He is a fantastic employee, and his next step will be to study and obtain his water license. So.
Okay. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Trustee Carter. Any questions? Anything, Mike? Okay. Next would be building maintenance. Anything, Trustee Mariscal?
I have nothing, Mayor.
Okay. Economic and Community Development, Trustee Kazam.
Yes, I have a few announcements, Mayor. We are celebrating a Heights holiday season this year. November 30th is Small Business Saturday. I want to remind everyone to come out and support our local businesses in the Heights. December 7th is It's Wonderful Heights, and Santa and Mrs. Claus will be coming to Peoria Heights to do some holiday shopping. We would like for you to stroll the business district and find the perfect gift for your family. And there'll be carolers and musicians as well, and there's a tree lighting ceremony that evening. And then on December 14th, Chocolate in the Heights is happening, and this is an evening of indulgence of chocolate and delights in participating shops and restaurants, and each location will offer something different in the chocolate theme. So gourmet chocolates, chocolate wine or liqueur, discounts on chocolate-colored items, and other sweet ideas. In addition to that, I want to report on the Peoria the Riverview Economic Development Coalition. We had our 4th official meeting last night in Spring Bay, and it was very well attended, and I think that we have participation from all the municipalities on either side of the river, from the McCluggage Bridge all the way up to Lakin, including Henry. Unfortunately, the mayor of Henry wasn't able to come last night, but we're making a lot of headway with this coalition, and the idea of this is to get a lot of participation and buy-in to support one another's festivals and also support tourism in and along the river. But the big news last night was Jason Beverland came. He's the deputy director of the river, of the Conservation and Nature Conservancy, and they have a national website that would cost us money to belong to. I think it's, they decide how much it costs depending on how many residents we have in a municipality. So for a municipality of our size of 6,000 more or less residents, it would be about $2,000 a year. And the KDB group and Kim Bleckenstaff decided to pay for 2 years for each of the municipalities to be a member of that website. So this is really good news for us. They get a lot, they have a big search engine, they, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but they have a lot of traffic on their website. So if you wanted to find out about scenic byways or, shops and that type of thing, restaurants in our area, it would all be on that website. So that's exciting. And that's it.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody has any questions about that. I'd be happy to answer it. There's more information, but I'll put it in.
Questions? Just if I may tag along, we do have a meeting coming up this Monday where we're going to talk more about the application for the housing grant. So I believe Klein and Associates are going to handle that application for us. And
That's correct. We just received a rough draft here just a couple days ago.
okay, so we're going to get started on that, and we'll keep everyone updated. Okay, on to administration and personnel. Trustee Gett.
Thank you, Mayor Phelan. We are starting the evaluations for the police department and public works this week, correct?
That's correct.
He should have, Chief Sutton believes he'll have it all wrapped up for us before the end of the month, so that's everything.
That's it? Anything?
That's it, Mayor.
All right. Anything for you, Dustin?
No,
on
that's
that?
it. Thank you.
Okay. On to fire. Trustee Weisenberg.
Yes, I have a few updates here. Give me a second. So we have a meeting scheduled next week on Wednesday to discuss the Grandview Terrace with the fire chief and to get his recommendations on a resolution for the residents on Grandview Terrace, who, if you recall, have a road that's not conductive for emergency vehicles, and they also do not have access to water as well in the event of a fire. I believe we also have a meeting scheduled with AMT, although I'm not sure what that date is, to discuss if they would be able to get an ambulance up that road as well. We're waiting on an updated server quote from Pearl regarding the fire department. We did receive a maintenance quote to bring the fire department under the umbrella of Pearl. And do you want me to talk about the rate we received?
You can, sure.
Yeah. So they quoted us $1,353 a month. And that doesn't include just the fire department, but it also includes administration as well. So it's bringing this building under the umbrella of Pearl.
Is that a number where you thought, or higher or lower?
I kind of thought it was a bit high, personally. They did waive a $1,500 initiation fee for that service. I think we're kind of waiting for the server quote to come in to really bring that in front of the board and discuss. So that's just a proposal they gave us. We haven't really given it any consideration
What was
yet.
that for?
Right. Well,
$1,300 for?
$1,353 was for backups and maintenance for not only the fire department, but administration as well. during the process of bringing the fire department in on a Pearl, we discovered that we didn't have any backups or maintenance on any of the other computers in this building.
So right now, we have no backup.
Correct.
With the village or the fire department.
Correct.
Just the police department,
Just
and
the police
we'll
department.
present the maintenance agreement and also the server quote at the same time, because I think what we'll see is there will be a savings when we get to the server quote compared to what the first, they were asked to quote X amount of storage. I think you're going to see a change in the price on that, so that's why we'll present them together. So, and then we also were going to compare that with the police's maintenance agreement, the police department. Now, they're obviously their own entity, they have their own server and backed up and everything else, so we're trying to get everything here done the same.
What do we pay for that one?
It's a little lower than that, so I think that before we roll out this maintenance agreement to the board, we'll wait till we get the server quote first and see what kind of negotiations we can do.
But in the meantime, we're not being backed up.
No, we are.
We could lose stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
we are in the process of doing that, Pearl, and since we don't have an agreement in place right now, it's just a week to week, but without wasting time, we didn't want to waste any time, so I expect to have this in front of you in the next meeting.
So the
Okay,
data.
but again, that right now, there's no backup
So
to be done.
the data in this building is not currently backed up, as I understand it.
So if our computers crash.
What Pearl explained when they were here doing the discovery, since we don't have a maintenance agreement, they would be on a week-to-week, and I do think that includes backup. Week to week, we would be billed until we get a maintenance agreement in place.
So they're backing up once a week currently until we decide on a maintenance agreement?
Yes, then we will have the agreement in place, but that was my understanding, but I'll confirm that with Ryan, because that was the board's concern, is that we need something now, we can't really wait. That's one reason we fast-tracked all this through from the fire department under the same maintenance agreement.
Okay.
Also, part of that project, we upgraded from an on-prem version of the Firehouse software to a cloud version. That was completed, and it was completed without any glitch. So the fire department is now using the cloud version of Firehouse. So all the critical data, the data that contained PHI and all that is now being hosted by the vendor and not in the basement. That's all I got.
So I'm going to go back to, because I'm still back to this not being backed up. So what about like the waterworks, Emily, and what she does? Is her system being backed up?
The waterworks they were actually using a part of the police department's backup, which we are going to separate all that, but that's what they've been doing for years.
So currently today?
Yes.
I mean, I know what we're going to do in the future, but currently today, is she being backed up every night?
Yes, for years,
Okay.
she's been using a portion of the police department's backup, but we want that separated and outlined, that's why we're moving forward. But yes, she is. And that's been done for years.
Is that all, Trustee Weisberg?
That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Next is police, Trustee DeVore.
The only thing I have tonight is that, just to update everyone, that the zoning board last night did pass for adult use of recreational cannabis. They were allowed to fill in some of the things that we had discussed, and the only thing that they filled in last night was they chose to limit the 500 feet from a school or church within inside of our municipality. And it was voted 5-2 to pass last night, and then it will come to us for discussion on December 4th, and then we will be voting on it on December 17th, I believe.
Was there, so 5-2?
5-2.
So two of them voted against it?
The one person voted against it because they did not agree with the 500 feet.
Less or more?
They thought it should be
They should
further
be,
on.
they thought, a couple of them feel that it should be the same as alcohol, and our current regulations for alcohol on a school or church is 100 feet.
Oh, okay.
So they feel like it should be the same, so if we're either we either need to that person believes that we should either raise it to alcohol to 500 feet or lower the cannabis to 100 feet, or make them the same, because it's not fair that they're
So
different.
match up.
Yes.
Any other objections?
That was.
That was the main discord of their meeting, was they weren't, was the disagreement on the footage, like the space between. The attorney that was here last night, what's her name? Katia did have a map for them to show which properties would be eligible to like house a dispensary, and the 500 feet that limits that too. So there was discussion on how that is limited, as well as it should be treated as the alcohol, so that it is separated by the different footage.
Just a quick question. I know this is coming up for discussion on December 4th, but because council is here tonight, we would potentially review each one of these applications as they come in, and we could restrict or, put any parameters.
It's a special.
Only allowed with a special use permit, so any proposed use would go through the zoning hearing process, followed by this board having final say, depending on what the ZBA says. So yeah, each individual user is going to be thoroughly vetted.
Okay.
This is just the broad framework of, we're going to allow it, and these are the parameters.
Okay.
On the flip side of that, if we keep it at the 500 feet, we can alter that too, if someone were to ask us for a special use, on their special use, to change the footage too.
Okay.
Was there any discussion about allowing it outside of War Memorial?
No, not really. I mean, everything is basically talking about, it's not, I don't think it's spelled out in the ordinance that it has to be on War Memorial, but
But it was the zoning district.
that is like, yeah, because it was in B2, and B2 lies in that War Memorial corridor.
So there was no discussion on that?
So you can't have any on Prospect?
As it stands right now, not without us changing or allowing a variance for that special use, can it be outside of B2?
And just like any, we'll get into this in December, but just like any other ordinance, it can be changed at any time. This is just our, first stab at this. I think a lot of communities are going to, after they have experience, are going to tweak their ordinances and say, we don't want that again, or this has worked. So a lot of it's going to be trial and error, but as our, this is just our first go-round.
I say we do the same with the alcohol. Okay. 100 feet's good for me.
And we can change that when we talk about it too, if that's what we want to do. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Any old business to come before the board? Okay, we'll move right into new business. The first is approval of a contract in the amount of $95,201 with Hassel, Levine, and Farnsworth Group for a comprehensive plan for the Village of Peoria Heights. Trustee Kazam, I'd ask for a motion to approve this.
Yes, I make a motion to approve this.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Before we get into the presentation, Trustee Kazam, is there anything you'd like to start with?
No, I think that we all understand from our previous meeting what we're discussing tonight, the proposal by Hassel, Levine, and Farnsworth Group for a plan for our community, and we have Representative Nick is here tonight to talk about it.
Ray, I'm going to actually,
Ray
Ray
sorry.
Lees, you're here from Tri-County, so we didn't really talk about this, but if you wouldn't mind coming up and telling us how we engage Tri-County to help us get this out on the street, and then introduce our two guests tonight, we'll take it from there. Gentlemen, you can come up and give your presentation. Ray, so everyone watching at home can hear you, if you'd come up to the podium, please.
Well, we through a number of conversations with Mayor Phelan and others, we had the opportunity to put together a request for proposal and to identify the scope of services and the professional services that the village required for this task. And so we did submit that to Dustin and for review, and it went through the typical selection process. And so out of that process, the team of Hassel, Levine, and Farnsworth was selected Obviously, they'll speak to the specifics. Both Nick and Jeff from Farnsworth and Nick from House Hill Levine will speak to the specifics of this, but obviously both of them have a relationship and knowledge of the village from past work. So I guess my presence here is really to indicate and show, I think, that the administration and the trustees of Village Heights understand Tri-County's role in supporting and anything that needs to be done that interface with these two fine firms. We would be more than happy to, continue our relationship in that regard. So.
Thank you, Ray.
Questions?
So welcome, gentlemen, if you'd come forward.
All right, well, good evening. Thanks to the board for giving us an opportunity to go over the proposal that I handed out, so everybody should have a copy of this. I know you've already spoken about this plan and really what the intent is moving forward. But I do want to give an opportunity for us to go through a couple of different things. One, I'll just give an introduction about myself, my firm. I want Jeff here from Farnsworth to talk a little bit about their firm and some of the work and experience in the past. So I'll hand it over to him, and then we'll go through a couple of different items. And then any questions you may have, feel free either during the presentation or afterwards. We can walk through them. First of all, my name's Nick Davis. I'm a principal at House Hill Levine. I specialize in urban planning and community-wide planning, community outreach, graphics visualization. So really all the things that it takes to do a comprehensive plan. It's something that our firm also specializes in across the country, also here in the Illinois region. I want to introduce Jeff from Farnsworth and let him talk a little bit about his firm, some of the work that they've done, and maybe just a little bit about how they'll tie into the project, and then I'll come back.
Sure. Some of you I know, some of you I don't. My name's Jeff Martin. I'm a landscape architect and community planner with Farnsworth Group. Back up a little bit, my personal history, I spent 20 years in Chicago working for a competitor of House Hill Levine, and we used to always grimace when we'd go up against them because they're a very fine firm. So I'm very familiar with comprehensive plans and how we'll tie in with that. Basically, we're supporting House Hill Levine on this. We've done a lot of work in the community, have other work going on in the community. Specifically, Paul Corey, the architect that some of you know, he's going to also be involved. We're going to help out with the community engagement. We've got our transportation engineers, our civil engineers that'll start to look at some of the more technical components. But again, we're mainly supporting House Hill Levine through this whole process and letting the public speak and putting a plan forward that really reflects the desires of the community. So generally, that's Farnsworth's role on the project.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I mean, we're really excited about this team. Sort of like Jeff just said, I feel like our two firms have been doing a lot of work here in the region, in the Heights specifically, for two, very different approaches. Our firm specializes in planning, and I think some of the projects that we've done in the past, the commercial corridors master plan, the corridors master plan, and then the commercial areas plan, have really focused on specific areas in the community, and there have always been these opportunities sort of surrounding the commercial areas, let it be the residential neighborhoods, some of the other employment or industrial sectors. Those are things that a comprehensive plan has a better grasp of, can talk about more holistically, start tying all these different visions, these goals together for what everyone in the community wants to see happen, not just, specifically along Prospect or not just along War Memorial, but what should be done throughout the entire community. How can all these other exciting projects or opportunities that are out there really start to push forward the vision of the community? So that in a nutshell is the importance of a comprehensive plan. It ties together all these systems, so land use, transportation, parks and open space. You have this eco-tourism, this opportunity that's around you in all these different areas in the community. All of that needs to be sort of woven together, and a lot of that comes from the community outreach. So up front, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in detail, but up front, much of what we're going to be doing is the outreach, getting a sense for what the community really wants to see. So it's really us taking a back seat and listening to the community and understanding what they want this plan to say. So in the future, when someone comes and proposes something, there's not opposition, there's not concern that that's not in line with what everybody's going to know what the goal goals are and what makes sense here and what people are looking to, see redevelop or improve in the future. So with that, I'm going to just go through this. I'm not going to go through every page. Certainly feel free to flip through it. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. But I just want to touch on some of the highlights, some of the things that I think are important to help you maybe make this decision. As I flip through this, our background and experience, both ours as well as Farnsworth, I think demonstrates our capability in this area. We've done numerous comprehensive plans, just as many sub-areas or site-specific plans, which we're recommending both here. So there's the comprehensive plan that's tying all these systems together, and then there are these area-specific plans that are determined based on where we've seen a lot of interest or where we see a lot of community input already coming in from other projects that we've done. So we've started to zero in on what we think could take just an extra level of detailed planning. So the comprehensive plan itself, sort of a high level. If you start to zero in on some of these sub-area plans, it'll be more reminiscent of the commercial area plans that we've done in the past, but it'll be about some new areas that we haven't really explored in detail like we've wanted to.
Nick, I'm sorry to interrupt
Yeah.
you, but just so we can follow along more productively, where are you?
Page numbers.
Yes.
I will give you page numbers. So right now, just looking at page 10. So approach to planning. These are just the fundamentals for us in terms of how we approach a plan in any community. So just some of the headings there. We focus on community planning. We focus on urban design. So we're always thinking about implementation. It's not just what makes a good policy, but also how would that be implemented. We have a foundation in experience. I think going back to the hundreds and hundreds of comprehensive plans that we've done, if you were to flip to any one of them, they're not identical. They don't look the same. The text is different. The visualizations are different. Even the layouts of the documents are different. Each project, that as inefficient as that probably is, each project to us is very special, and we want to approach it in such that we know, what might be a community adjacent to you's issues are not your issues, and we recognize that. So we make sure that the language that we're preparing, the graphics that we're preparing are very much in line with what you expect. We engage in the community outreach, more so than most, and I think that's something that's very important to us. The community outreach, I can come in and say what I think you should be doing, and that would not produce a plan that you'll want to implement. That's not the way you should be doing these types of studies. What you need to do is reaching out to the public, reaching out to the business owners, the stakeholders, meeting with boards and commissions, anybody who's going to be involved in implementing this plan beyond when it's adopted. That's who needs to be here. That's who needs to be a part of the conversation, because that's the people that ultimately have to live in the community, have to be a part of bringing in the type of development or the types of improvements they want to see. So that upfront third of the project is very much dedicated to receiving that feedback before we even start making any plan recommendations. It's not really until the middle of this project, this effort, that you'll start to see us producing recommendations. We want to make sure that we've heard everything that we can hear. The illustrative format, quality graphics, I think just understanding how to better visualize, better present some of this information. It can't just be solid text. I think being able to visualize that information is very helpful. Technology integration is very important to us. I think there's different ways that we can incorporate the traditional the outreach, the face-to-face in a room very much like this, or in a room that's larger, depending on the outreach that we're trying to obtain. On the flip side of that, there are people who can't make these meetings and do want to participate from home, and I think giving them that opportunity through a project website and some innovative tools that we use online for mapping will be a successful way to get that feedback. We are a creative, innovative group. I think we pride ourselves on that every project that we move into, what are things that we've learned along the way that we think would be very helpful to effectively communicate that idea, or what is different ways to use the data or analyze the data to maybe tell that story, or make a more compelling compelling policy or compelling graphic. Then targeted implementation. Again, I think that's something, and this is where working with Farnsworth, this is going to be fantastic, is taking these planning recommendations and policies and tying them to implementation, tying them to things that you can actually do. And it's more than just checking a box. It's starting to effectively navigate the change that you want to see through the plans and policies that were set in place by the community, and starting to see that roll out through these future projects. A comprehensive plan, if done successfully, will lead to 20 or 30 plans afterwards that are right where you want to be. It might be a more detailed traffic study, or it might require a neighborhood plan, or, there's things that can come out of this that lead to real change in a community, and you want that all guided by one sole vision that's been established by this plan. So from this plan, you should have a very clear vision of where you want to go. And then just commitment to client satisfaction. I think the fact that we're here, I'm hoping is an indication that our clients are satisfied with the plans that we produce. We always try to go above and beyond. That's something that's really sort of ingrained in our process. So that's our approach to planning. I think as I touched through there, those are the aspects of planning that we think are important as we go about this project. I won't go through all of our experience. I think some of those that are relevant. So on page 13, I'm not going to list all the ones on 12. On page 13 and then some of the subsequent pages, just some of the studies that we've done in the past. And I think having worked now here in the Heights for the last 5 or 6 years, it's been really exciting to work on the corridors. It's been exciting to work in the downtown area and some of these commercial area plans, but it's always been a real desire of mine to explore the Heights in general, just all of Peoria Heights. And I think that's exactly what a comprehensive plan is going to allow us to do, to start answering some of the questions that I think we get asked, that when you're focused on the commercial areas, you don't get to deal with housing, how the neighborhoods are going to tie in together, as well as into some of these commercial areas, how you're getting more activity down along the river. I mean, what are some of the things that we can explore, through this process? And I think that's things that we'll receive as feedback from the community, but also just some of our sort of best practices approaches to where we think we should be navigating some of the plans, either insights or recommendations.
Nick, if I may interrupt, going to page 12 where you cite some of your experience, do any of those communities that you've listed have similar opportunities and maybe similar challenges than what we have? Would there be any that you would point to specifically that?
Yeah, this is always a scary question because they are so different. But there are some communities that we've worked in where I feel like some of the opportunities that are happening around you are very similar, maybe at a different scale. We worked in Bentonville, Arkansas, which I'm not sure. Yep, Bentonville, Arkansas is on here. It's the home of Walmart, and what makes this, I think some of the things that are happening here that are really exciting is some of the interest that's coming in from, Kim Blicken's staff and, other future investors that are going to want to be a part of, I think, what you're trying to achieve. Same thing in Bentonville, Arkansas. It's working side by side with those groups, but also recognizing that as a community, as a village, you need to establish your vision as well first, so you can start to guide maybe or influence what those plans or what those objectives should be. So I think there's a lot of communities like that where they have opportunities around them and they want to make sure they're taking advantage of them, but they also want to make sure that they know their values, that they understand their vision. And that is what I think I'm probably most excited about here, is helping this community, establish its foundation, establish its vision, start setting up the policies and the plan recommendations for all these different systems in the community, and then watching all these different people that want to come in and help you achieve those goals. That's going to be, I think you have a very exciting 5-10 years out there, and I think you get to set the tone for what that should be. So yeah, there's a couple of communities. That's the one that comes off the top of my head, but there's others that I'm sure would be appropriate. Yep. The commercial quarters plan, the commercial areas, sub-area plans, some of those I still think would tie in very well to the comprehensive plan, could even be refined based on some of the feedback that we receive. And then these are just the following pages beyond page 14 are just example projects. By no means, am I saying like your Schaumburg, but I think it just represents the breadth of work that our firm, we work in smaller communities, we work in very large communities, but I think in every one of them we recognize each community has its own challenges and its own opportunities, and how you capitalize on those and how you respond to those is very important. So that's something that we're very adept at, our team. And I think working with Farnsworth Group and having that local knowledge, and even in partnership and in working with Tri-County in the future and working with you, I think we're going to be able to fine-tune this to be exactly what it needs to be. All right, I'm going to jump ahead because I don't want to go through all these things, but please review all of the different projects that we've done in the past that I think are good examples, but I do want to spend a little bit of time on, let's jump ahead to page, I just want to go over the scope. Okay, so page 53. So the big parts that I jumped over are experience, and then also just about our team, but over kind of at a high level. You have a couple of key planning team members from our office who will be on this project, 2 of which have worked in the Heights on previous projects in the past, so I know they're very excited about this. I know Farnsworth is currently working here, has worked here, and again, I think our teaming on this is, it's just really exciting for both of us, because I think we balance each other out in terms of where our expertise lie, and where working with another team member is appropriate. So this is I think, a very good partnership moving forward. So what I want to talk about, page 53, is project approach, the scope of work. Does anybody have any questions? By the way, I know I talk fast. I'm going to try to slow down. I had coffee right before I walked in. So go ahead.
I do, but I'll wait until you're done.
Okay,
I have
yeah,
questions when
let's
you're
do that.
finished as well.
We'll do that. So I'm going to go high level. I'm not going to go detailed. If you have a question, we can always go right back to it. But the main way that we've structured this comprehensive plan, I think, is in response to work that we've done here in the past. I know I recognize some of the board members. There's some new board members. I'm anticipating as we work through this project, we're going to have a lot more people that maybe we haven't met come through. So engagement was very important to us. So right at the beginning, this project initiation, we want to establish sort of the criteria, what we're supposed to be doing. We know what we think we should be doing for the comprehensive plan. It's very important that we understand what the village, what staff wants. Ultimately, as we start rolling out this approach, hearing from the community what they expect to see from this project, we can tell them what a comprehensive plan is and what the purpose of it is, but how that really transform into the document that you get at the end very much depends on what we hear from the community and what we hear from groups like yourself. So we'll meet with staff, we'll do a village department head meeting, we'll prepare a data atlas, which is essentially, it's a breakdown of all the different maps, assessments, or summaries of just past plans, past studies. Make sure that we have a very clear picture of all the things that are what will make up sort of those existing conditions. It's not this, long report by any means, but it's meant to serve as a starting point. So this is everything that we know up to this point. This is where all the parks are, this is where the residential neighborhoods are, these are your key streets or thoroughfares, that type of thing. We'll present that to the group, and I think get a better understanding of is this not sort of the existing conditions, the baseline that we want to work from, and then that's how we're going to start rolling into some of the outreach, just with our basic understanding of the community. Community engagement, as I've probably stressed to this point, and I'll continue to stress, is step 2. So starting on page 54, we'll launch a project website, and that's going to run along the entire project, and it's going to shift over time. So at the beginning, it's going to be very much about data collection or understanding of the issues or opportunities that are out there, and then as we start rolling out later on in the process, different recommendations or policies or even plan maps, it'll be an opportunity for people to respond or give us feedback. That's how that site will start to shift. We'll do these online questionnaires, we'll do Map Social, both of which are geolocating. So any recommendation or any comment that someone's making on a website can be tied geospatially. So if they're making a comment, they could say, I don't like this building, or I love this park, we go there all the time, and instead of just writing it, they can drop a pin on a map so we know right where that is. That becomes data that we can analyze in the future. So people are helping us generate, kind of crowdsource this information, and it's a great way to visualize input, which I think is very effective, helps people see where their recommendations or where their comments can be tied into a plan in the future. We'll do key stakeholder interviews. That's meant to be targeted groups of people that might have a specific interest. So you meet with school districts, you might meet with neighborhood groups or neighborhood associations, downtown business owners, that type of thing. Groups that have similar interests or maybe conflicting interests but are coming down on the same issues. We'd like to meet with them at the same time, go over an exercise that ultimately, as we work through all of these, people will have a good understanding of how their input's going to tie in and what kind of feedback they want to give us. Business focus group, so it'll be similar to a community outreach, a community engagement that we'll do, and then the advisory panel meeting, which depending on what that makeup looks like, would just be sort of our sounding board. This is the group that, as we're preparing summaries or getting better understanding of the community, or as we transition into plan making, start to vet these ideas to them or present them. These types of ideas, is this on point? Is this the direction we should be going? Scratch that, that's not working, or yes, this is, I think, exactly what people want to see. So it's our first blush before we go out to the public, and then we will ultimately go out to the public, and we'll continue that iterative build process throughout the entire project. We'll do a community visioning charrette. So that's meant to do a couple of things. One, it's going to validate at this point a lot of what we've heard up to this point. We're going to talk a lot about the different issues and opportunities that are out there. People are going to be sitting around big tables, they'll be drawing drawing on maps, telling us where they'd like to see a specific use, or where they think a connection is necessary, or an area that they just think needs more planning for whatever reason, or more ideas, or like to see something change, or think that area is perfect and don't touch it. There's a lot of different ideas that are out there, and putting people at a table and working with a group is a good way to start to hear different voices and hear different ideas, and we like to do that at a large level. That right there is when we'll start to flip into, okay, at this point we've heard from the public, we've heard from the different groups, we've done our homework. Now is when we're going to start transitioning from visioning into plan making. So then the next step will be the community vision goals and policies. So I'm on page 56. We'll establish a vision statement for the community. And what the intent of that vision statement is to paint a picture of, essentially what you're looking to achieve in 15 years, 20 years, depending on what we think the scope of this project is. My thought is this is probably a 15-year plan. So we're looking 15 years out. There's some things you're going to do tomorrow. There's some things you can do in a year. There's some things that might take 15 years. There's some that you may never achieve. But I think you want to make sure you get all of these ideas out there on paper. It should be visionary, exciting, something that you want to strive for. We'll establish some goals and policies. So we'll establish the goals about how you achieve that vision, and then we'll start to frame out what those policies look like. What's going to get you across that finish line? What specifically do you need to start doing? And that's going to be starting to get prepared in this section. We'll do a preliminary land use recommendation. So that's going to be a map and maybe some land use designations that clearly indicate areas of potential change, areas that are right where they need to be with maybe some minor tweaks. A lot of different concepts are going to come together to help us form that land use policy. We'll do a staff review. We'll again meet with that advisory panel. They'll get an opportunity to provide feedback both through staff review and the advisory panel. Then we'll move into step 4 on page 57, the framework plans, and we'll do some webinars. So this is a way, we've seen success with this and it's been great. In an effort to maybe not just have 2 or 3 advisory committee meetings, we want to host multiple meetings. We find a way to do this is with these webinars, where the first webinar, we're going to present these comments. We're going to present then plan recommendations, even some maps. We can walk through it. It's something that we'll have like a set time for this webinar, and if they can't make it, it's recorded, so people are able to watch it later. They're able to provide us feedback and summary. It's very similar to just hosting a meeting, but it gives people an opportunity to participate sort of at their own pace. Some people can't make the 6 to 8:30 meeting all the time, but this is a way that everybody's able to participate. We're also able to break these out into pieces so we can do multiple meetings. So the first webinar is about transportation and mobility, community facilities, infrastructure. Those are the types of land use policies we're going to be drafting, or those are the types of policies we'll be drafting there. The second webinar will focus on parks, open space, and environmental features. And then the third webinar will be a focus on the sub areas and implementation. So those two kind of go hand in hand, where we're going to kind of drill down. That one's going to be a little bit more detailed focus, talking about these sub areas throughout the community, and then how you want to move forward in implementation. What are some of those strategies? What are some of the approaches? What are potential funding sources? I know the community's done a very good job of seeking funding sources. It's something you want to continue to just always be on top of and continue to do well. It's something that sets, I think, communities apart in achieving their goals. Step 5, so page 58, is the first time you'll see everything come together into one document. So that's that draft comprehensive plan. We'll go through another staff review. We'll then meet with the advisory panel. We'll do a working session. We'll go through this essentially page by page, and any feedback, any comments that we receive, that will be rolled right into a revised document that will ultimately be presented at a community open house, and now the community gets a chance to respond to our recommendations, the policies. Hopefully by this point they've seen along the way where their input is tied directly into the plan. I think that's something that we sort of pride ourselves on, and we'll make sure to make that very clear. This is stuff that came from outreach. We heard that at this meeting. We saw that on this visioning map, that type of thing. One of the things that I think is important, and I know something that the village has already talked about or considered in the past, is once we get to a point where we're very comfortable with where we think the plan's recommendations are going, a zoning audit is appropriate. I always recommend that you do your comprehensive plan first, then you go and you start potentially changing regulations, or potentially changing, basically the laws that govern what you can do on a property. So that zoning audit, because zoning and planning are very, very different. Planning informs zoning. Zoning implements policies from planning, but it does it through law. So you have to be very careful that we don't kind of don't blur that line. An audit will be prepared that'll just give you a sense of, based on what the community's saying and what we've heard and what's proposed in this comprehensive plan, these are areas of the zoning code you may want to review, you may want to amend. You may be fine, it might be perfect. There might be some areas that you want to fine tune, there might be whole sections. So we won't know that until we're through the comprehensive plan and we've heard the feedback from the public. Final plan and report is the last piece, public hearing and hopefully an adoption. All right, anyway, I threw a bunch there. Project schedule, we're not on track on that project schedule, so that's okay though. We're going to work on that with staff, if we're lucky enough to work on this project, about what the right schedule is, what the timelines are, and how we would get to there. I do think this approach, a lot of comprehensive plans can take 12 to 18 months. That is not our approach here. We think it can be done, I don't want to say quicker, but the main thing that impacts the schedule is outreach, and I say never rush that. It should always be done appropriately. You don't want to lose out on an opportunity to bring people to the table, but those are really how you structure this plan, is when we're able to do these community outreach events, when we're getting the most out of that. But the rest of this is, I think, stuff that we can work on in terms of timeline. Okay, I know I threw a bunch at you there. There's some questions I'll let you process, and then we can start answering.
You answered some of my questions, but I'm going to ask them, and you can just answer them. So one of my first questions was, what prompted you to team up with Farnsworth, and do you see this as adding cost, was one of them. I wanted to also know, and you talked about this just now with zoning, but with the visual maps, will you work with us on zoning to streamline our zoning code and be more specific as to what our vision is? You talked about the timeline, and the last one was, I wanted to make a comment, but I can make this at the end, that our previous corridor plan that you worked on has helped us greatly in enticing new business to our community. So those are just some of the ideas and thoughts that I had.
Okay, I'm going to address those in almost reverse order. Yep. So corridor master plan, that's great to hear. I know that the corridor master plan, when we originally drafted it, again, it was more of a focus, as much of a planning study as it was a focus on implementation. And I think the groups that we met with during that process were pivotal in helping move that plan forward and starting to get it achieved. So that was really exciting to see. I think that was one of the few instances where you start to see planning actually happen, within the decade that you did it. Some plans take a very long time to realize. I think you've had an opportunity here to realize your recommendations, your high-level plans much faster than most, which is really exciting to see. Zoning, like I said, they're two very different exercises, but I do know our firm, we specialize in zoning as well. That's something that we do quite a few of. I always recommend, like I said, we'll do a community-wide plan, a comprehensive plan, and I think the more you get to know a community and understand its issues, when you start to transition after the adoption of the comprehensive plan into zoning, it's almost a logical leap, is, okay, we just established what some of the challenges are, what some of the issues are that we need to address. There's some serious red flags inside the zoning code that we have to update. I think going back, maybe some of the sign code issues, I'm not even sure if that's up to speed with Reed v. Gilbert. There's some things that you just need to do tomorrow. There's other things that you might not need to do for some time, but those are things that we can help frame out, and then certainly moving forward, we'd love to continue working with the village on those types of projects. And then working with Farnsworth. Certainly having a team member on your team, there's always opportunities. I think we're very cautious about who we team with and why we team. This is an ad service, in my opinion. The level of work that they're able to, or the level of expertise they're able to provide inside the sub areas is very helpful. And I would say in most of our plans where we feel like there's a sub area that's going to require either transportation or more detailed planning, it's not that our shop can't do it. It's just there's people that specialize in it, and it makes sense to bring them on. I even think the way that we've scoped this out, Farnsworth would be attending these meetings, they'll help us with the outreach, but in terms of the community-wide plans, that's very much what we'll be focusing on, and even helping framing out what's happening in the suburbs, that's going to be done by our team. But when you start getting into the nitty-gritty or understanding what the cost of implementations might be, having a team like a firm like Farnsworth on our team makes a lot of sense for us. So I think that's why we partnered with them, and that's why we came to this teaming.
I think one thing to keep in mind, the previous studies that we did were paid for with transportation grant money, so it required us to focus solely on transportation or transportation-related issues, where this will allow us to drill down much deeper.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have a lot more, those were exciting plans to work on. You have so much more freedom here on what you're able to address, and it's all things related to planning with a comprehensive plan. So I do think you're going to start exploring ideas that we just couldn't really step into when we were working on those other studies, but I think very much address issues and concerns that we would hear throughout those studies and just say, that's unfortunate, that's out of our purview, or that's out of the scope of this work. Very little is out of the scope of work here. It's certainly at a high level, so that's great. I think you're going to be able to start setting that tone or setting that policy recommendation in place. Okay, any other questions? Sure.
So when we're doing this, will you be taking the current plans that we have, like the commercial corridor plan, and just implementing them into this new plan, or will those areas get like a fresh look too?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it'll depend. There's some areas where, like right now, we're actually currently working on the War Memorial corridor. That's going to get folded right into this process. So I think that's almost starting at, I'm going to say, 0, and we need to revisit some of those ideas. Certainly as we start reaching out to the community, I think there's times where we've talked to the community, and I think people might have seen that as, well, they're just talking about the corridors, so maybe the residents that live adjacent to them or a little bit deeper didn't participate in the process. We're hoping that with this outreach approach, and knowing that we are talking about all things in the community, people who maybe never showed up for the sub-area stuff should be showing up to the community-wide. So we'll get a little bit more of an even balance on what people want to see in Peoria Heights, what people are hoping to accomplish. So I do think there's some things that we might need to examine. I don't intend to take all the corridor master plan and sort of embed it into here, but there's some themes or ideas, but I wouldn't move it forward if it's something we don't hear from the public. We might have to re-examine some things, but I think in most cases what's been achieved, I wouldn't keep kind of banging that drum. I think we would move on to what are some other things we need to accomplish. One of the other things that I think that'll help get framed out from is the vision. If there's things in the vision where they're in stark contrast to what we've done in plans in the past, then we need to re-examine those. So yeah, I don't consider anything untouchable. And as part of this process, we'll review all our plans, even beyond just ours. And we've done that in the past. We've done that in the past, but we've never done that in the lens of a comprehensive plan. So I think we'll even need to re-examine those to have a better understanding of what's been done in the past, what's been successful, and what could be carried forward, and what needs to be looked at.
Okay. As far as the community outreach goes, what ways will we be reaching out to the community other than meetings? And when we do have meetings, how will the residents be notified, and in how much time frame will they have?
Okay.
Was that too many at a time?
Nope. So the first one would be many different ways in terms of how we want to reach out to the public. One of the things is, I think, leveraging the Heights' approaches to social media, what you're already doing successfully, we'll tie into that. So we would be providing, either literature or handouts or even if it's like a press release, whatever we can do in terms of helping the village get that message out. The message does need to come from the village. If Nick from House of Levine starts sending emails out to the public, we're not going to get a great turnout. But if the village is pushing that message out and kind of explaining, hey, tonight we're going to do this community workshop, we're going to be talking about all the different ways that we could, potentially moving forward, start addressing some of these issues. We'd like to get your opinion. That's the kind of language that will help the village draft. But one of the ways that we're hoping is to leverage your social network, your different strategies. If it's putting things out in water bills, if it's putting things out in leaflets or handouts, whatever's worked in the past, plus anything that we've done in other communities, we'll work with you on that. So that's one of the first things that we'll do in the kickoff meeting is, what are some of the strategies that work to getting people to attend your meetings? We'll talk about some of the things that we know are successful elsewhere, and that's part of our strategy development. The meetings that we would be doing are the visioning workshop. That's I don't think it would be in here. It'd be in probably a bigger space where there's tables that people can get set up. I would give people at least a month, and then continue to send out kind of reminders about that event, continue to post, make sure that the businesses are involved so they know how to, maybe put stuff up in their shops. a lot of different ways to get, I think, the message out there. And then the online portion, so there's a project website, and I mean, we do have a lot of data that shows where there's some people that just can't come to that visioning workshop. So we've developed a software in-house that basically is an online visioning exercise that you can do at any time you want. It's really interesting to see when people fill these out. We're getting submittals at 2 in the morning because that's when someone has time to do this. Can't go to a public meeting at 2 in the morning, but you can fill out this online exercise, or you can do an online questionnaire if you don't feel inclined to do a map. We also just allow open comment. So if on the project website someone wants to send us a comment and say I have 2 issues, these are my 2 issues, those get pulled into our summary of community input. So those are the ways that we intend on reaching out to the public, and then once they're in, facilitating a discussion with them.
Okay. Last one. Who and how is the advisory committee chosen?
That's something we would work with, if it's not the board, we would work with staff to maybe establish what that group should be. It really does vary in each community. I'm working currently with a community who it is their board. The only challenge there is you have quorums. It can be a little bit more challenging to fit into your current schedule, but it also can be appropriate. In that community, they are the governing body. They want to be the ones that are adopting the plan. They want to be a part of it all the way. In other communities, what we recommend is maybe a few board members. Maybe it's someone from zoning and planning. Maybe it's a prominent business owner in the downtown. Maybe it's a resident that leads one of the resident group. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to make up that group, but we would definitely work with staff to fine tune what we think the best approach is. But I do recommend an advisory committee. It helps us. I mean, we're going to be putting out ideas sometimes that we think, reflect the comments that we've heard from the community. Someone said this, and this, and what I hear in my mind is this idea or policy works, and then I say that, and they're like, whoa, can't do that. That might be a little too far, or that's good. Let's see. That is an idea that we like. Maybe this group's slightly uncomfortable by it, but the public might not be. So it just gives us a good sense of, local opinions, or some of that nuances that can get lost. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a few. Have there been any initial plans or ideas that have been submitted to the village regarding a comprehensive plan?
From us?
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
I touched on this a couple meetings ago, but the colors on these maps, like it says, proposed Duryea extension. Are these this is page 14, sorry.
Yeah.
Are these just...
Oh, I'm sorry. So that's a previous plan. So that was...
What plan is this?
The commercial areas sub-area plan that we did a few years back. About a year and a half ago.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm one of the new trustees.
Oh, okay.
So,
yeah. And I sort of I might have gone over that a little quick. So these are just experience sheets of projects that we've done, across the country. These 2 in particular are projects that our firm, Hustle Levine, had worked on in the past. There's the commercial corridors master plan, which was adopted, I believe, in 2014. And then the commercial area sub-area plans wasn't necessarily a document that was adopted. It was a study that was done for just specifically the commercial areas. And there were 3 or 4 that were identified. They're very detailed plans and studies, and this comprehensive plan is something that's very different. There are some of the aspects of this that we would like to probably re-examine when we start doing our community outreach, but this had a process that also had community involvement and opportunities for people to participate. Yeah, but this study is sort of a very different study. Yeah, that's probably the best way to describe that.
Who is the project team?
So the project team on the Hustle Levine side, it would be myself, Josh Coons from our office, and Tricia Parks. So that's the core team. And we have other people in our office that specialize in certain things that might be a part of this. If housing is something that's very important, we have people in our office that specialize in housing. We have people that specialize in economic development. Actually, one of the guys that worked on the commercial area sub-area plan with me, Michio Mirkishi, specializes in economic development, which ties back to that implementation side. Not necessarily like the focus of a comprehensive plan, but certainly helpful to get that input from him. So that's just from us. I think here I'll flip you to...
It's page 37.
Yeah, page 37. And then from Farnsworth Group, Paul Corey, architect, Joseph Adams, Brandon Lott, and then Jeff Martin, sorry.
So when you reference project team, that doesn't include anyone from the village of Peoria Heights?
Not for the project team that we identify here. The best way I would describe our role is it's essentially like you're bringing on 7 planners to help you, 7 planners, architects, landscape architects, to help you do this plan, because day to day, it's not that most planning staff wouldn't be able to do this. They just don't have the time, and that's not where their focus is. So we are sort of that extension of staff to do this. By all means, and throughout this process, staff's going to be heavily involved. The advisory committee is going to be involved. That'll be something that's important to us to kind of have that touchstone with staff as well as the advisory committee. Sorry.
Sure. So with the webinars, when it says the webinars will be conducted by the project team, so that's you guys.
So we would facilitate a webinar that would include village staff and that advisory committee.
And that's where I was confused, because it said project team staff, so I wasn't sure if that was referencing your staff or our staff.
Both. I mean, we would
We'll
facilitate.
work closely together to
exactly.
establish those dates and times. And
What involvement would the board have with this plan, with the development of this plan?
I mean, you're able to participate in all the community outreach events. You're able to participate online. If there's checkpoints along the way, that's something that staff could be facilitating, kind of like updates. This is what's going on. It really depends on how the makeup of the advisory committee is determined. We have some, that's one reason why we always recommend that maybe 2 people from the board participate, because they could do the regular check-ins. Like, hey, we had an advisory committee meeting 2 weeks ago. I just want to give an update as part of this meeting tonight. Real quick on the comprehensive plan, we talked about this, this, and this. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. We can send that back to the project team, so House of Levine and Farnsworth, or send that back to staff. If the board is the advisory committee meeting, you would be as involved as the advisory committee meeting.
keep in mind, too, that any meetings we have will have to comply with the Open Meetings Act, so staff will have to be involved to notice these.
Yep.
The village board should, as a whole, should direct and influence the development of any plan. Is it the plan to have the village board as the advisory committee?
I think once we adopt this tonight, we'll have at the next departmental meeting how you want this to unfold. We'd look for recommendations, but I really haven't thought that far. That makes sense to me, just that everyone from the board would participate in this. I hope so.
I mean, you'd have multiple opportunities. Say the advisory committee was not the board, you would still have multiple opportunities to participate in the project and give us the feedback. It still has to, once we get to the draft comprehensive plan and into adoption, it's coming back to the board for at least 1 round, if not 2, of potentially giving us the input that we need if we need to make any refinements or something's not on point. But again, hopefully along the way, you've participated in the visioning workshop, you've participated in feedback that's being received by a board member or 2 that are on that advisory committee meeting. Those are the things that we can work on.
So I think the board should be the advisory committee. Should we determine that before we approve a comprehensive plan? I mean, who makes that decision? If we approve this plan tonight, who makes is it the board that decides who the advisory committee is?
Well, everything that comes forth through this plan, the board will adopt finally and through the course of the work schedule, too. So if you want to add something at the next departmental meeting specifying things, I think that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, or if you want to propose an additional meeting or 2 throughout the process with the board, that's something we could also do.
So just so I understand.
I do find there are benefits to the advisory committee being made up of not just the board. There are also benefits from made up of just the board. I think that's something that you guys could obviously discuss internally, maybe what's been successful here in the past. But you do open up the chance for other community members to be involved in helping kind of guide or steer the process, but they're not the ones that adopt it. It still has to come back to, and it will come back to the board for that approval, which means that if there's anything that needs to be shaped or needs to be reviewed or discussed, that opportunity still exists.
Yeah, no, I understand that we would approve the final product, if you will. I just want to make sure that we decide the makeup of the advisory board.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I think that's a good idea.
The stakeholder interviews, would those also be determined by the board? Would we decide who those stakeholders are in those interviews?
I suppose so. I mean, again, I think we get to a departmental meeting and we decide what the next steps would be. So who are the stakeholders? I mean, things that come to mind would be education, library, township, other, government stakeholders, business stakeholders, Chamber of Commerce. There's going to be lots of stakeholders, I would think.
Residential stakeholders?
Yep. Yeah, and I think working with staff, I mean, certainly the board would be giving input on who could be making up these stakeholder groups, but I think there's a lot of different groups of people that we're going to want to meet, and I know how many partners are here in Peoria Heights. I think picking or identifying the right mix of people for those groups is going to be something that we're going to have to work with staff on. It's not going to just be us showing them a list. Typically what we do is we ask staff identify the 20 or 30 people that we need to talk to. If in part of identifying those 20, 30 people, they're taking feedback from village board, that makes sense, and that might be something they want to explore, but definitely working with staff is how we're going to get to that list.
And again, nearly everything is going to have to be noticed. It's going to be a public meeting because we're going to have board members present, so everything will be on the calendar.
Any other questions?
I'm done.
Okay. Any other questions?
I think I have a couple questions. So when you're talking about the vision of the village on what we want, are we talking about like how we see the village in the future, or do we have any say-so on businesses that come into the village? Is that what we're trying to determine with this?
It doesn't.
I mean, if you have, personal investors coming in and purchasing things or wanting to build things, or would they have to stay within the vision of what we want, or are they free to do whatever they want to do? Okay.
So a vision, it's not regulatory. Nothing in the comprehensive plan is regulatory, so it's not by law. There are things that there are policies or recommendations that you could codify in the future if there were design guidelines that came out of maybe what we talked about along one of the sub areas, and you want to move those forward into your zoning code or codify them or have some kind of design review. There's teeth that you can put into some of the things that come out of this comprehensive plan, but by and large, and certainly like the vision and the goals, that wouldn't be something that you would tell someone, you have to do this. One of the first questions as a board I would always ask is, have you reviewed our comprehensive plan and are you in alignment with our comprehensive plan? That is something that you can ask them as part of this process. So when someone's submitting an idea to you, and then even after this, once you've established a vision, there may be things that have been determined based on that vision or this new vision for the community. There are things within the zoning code that aren't helping you achieve that. You do need to, either amend a code or completely rewrite a code, and those are things that would start to codify, that would start to regulate what someone should be doing on a property that is in alignment with what you're trying to accomplish. But a vision should be something, it's much more broad. It is probably the most broad language within the comprehensive plan that we'll draft. And it's meant to sort of capture collectively in 15 years, what should Peoria Heights be? And hopefully, we're about as close as when we get out 15 years, you've achieved much of that vision. That's the goal. It's very high, it's very lofty, but it's something that you're trying to attain, you're trying to work towards. So I think that might address maybe what your question was there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that the mayor and some of the other board members we kind of are looking at like a Galena type, destination type area, but are there ways for us to keep it, I'm just throwing an example because I don't know exactly how all of this works, but like, let's just say we wanted everything in the Heights to be brick, and somebody came in and they wanted theirs to be like a shiny metal. That's just, I'm just throwing something out there.
Yeah.
If our vision is that everything be like Old Town and look, we're trying to make, the look of the Heights be a certain way, do we have say-so on that or not?
So the vision would establish an intent that you're trying to, the vision, imagine that's like a 2 or 3 page within a document of what you're trying to do. One of the things it would say is hypothetical. I'm not saying this is going to the plan, but just us talking. One of the things might be, the character to, residents and businesses in the Heights is very important. We want to make sure that future development, on and on and on. One of the recommendations in maybe the residential area sections or in the land use plan might say how important it is that future development consider things like existing developments consider facade improvements. Future developments are looking at the materials, are considering what that looks like. One of the things at the very end in implementation might be review the zoning code to make sure that in certain districts, buildings that are being redeveloped in the future adhere to or meet this desire. So then when you get to the zoning side, you might actually, separate document, you might revise the code to require everybody to do brick. That's very prescriptive, and I'm not necessarily saying you have to do that.
I didn't mean to go there.
But I'm just saying, like, you would get there, you wouldn't be able to require it in this document, but you would set the stage for exploring that in your next effort. And one of your first efforts that I always recommend is go to zoning. I mean, do some of those low-hanging fruit, and zoning is one where through updating your zoning code, you immediately impact what can be done, right, on any property. And the underlying zoning will always govern what someone can do on a property, not the comprehensive plan. That's visionary, it's policy, it's recommendation. The zoning code is ultimately what you can do and what you must do.
Any developer that comes here is going to have to come before us and have their pictures of what they plan on, their drawings and everything. And if we don't think it fits in that area of town, I mean, it's up to us or whoever the board is at the time. No, I don't think so. I don't think that's the appropriate place for this to be. I mean, it's all up to the board. They got to come before the board and get approval from the board for any kind of development they want to do, especially with the TIF we got going in the BDD. We got a lot going here, and we can't just let anybody come in and put up whatever they want, and they will have to adhere to.
Will there be someone overseeing all of that, though? Because we know where we're at right now with a specific incident that, you know, the plans came before us and everything was approved and zoning approved it, and then nobody watched it and it became something it wasn't supposed to be. So, I mean, are we going to have people overseeing that, or how is it going to work?
Yeah, and I think even through the comprehensive plan, and then ultimately as you review your zoning code in the future, that's a system, that could potentially be a systems breakdown, a processes breakdown. There's a couple of things that lead to that. That's not unique to Peoria Heights, that happens in a lot of communities. And I would even point back, you know, what does it say in your comprehensive plan? That starts this whole domino effect. And for you'd be able to sit there and say, this area we've specifically identified, or we've at least loosely identified what we're trying to accomplish here. Your proposal doesn't help us achieve that. You know, you need to go back and re-examine that. Or maybe even further down the line, it's like, we've updated our zoning code. This isn't even complying with the underlying zoning requirements because of what we've said in the past on our comprehensive plan, what we're trying to achieve. So this is this first opportunity for everyone in the community to start frame out, okay, what are we trying to do? Do we want brick everywhere, or, boy, I hope I don't get quoted for that, but do we want, yeah, scratch, but what do we want? What do we all agree is important to us? And then what plans in the future do we need to either draft, do additional studies, update the zoning code, put the right processes in place so something doesn't slip by, because we don't want to lose sight of the things that are important to us. I think a lot of times people are talking about like redevelopment or changes, but there's many things that are just important to the community that exist here that a comprehensive plan helps to identify and say, these are assets, this is important to the community, don't change these. These are doing what they're supposed to do. We don't want to lose sight of that. So there's a lot of things that I think we're able to establish in the comprehensive plan that'll help make it very clear to when a developer comes in, they read these plans. They know what a community's trying to accomplish. They're well aware of what a community's comprehensive plan is, what their zoning codes are. If it's out there that this is what you're hoping to succeed, sometimes that starts to not even become an issue. They approach it already knowing what they need to do.
Well, I know what Trustee Mariscal was getting at about something in the past happening where they just weren't observed and they went ahead and did whatever they wanted. And I think it'd be a good idea to find somebody or assign somebody that task of when they come in, they go by and make sure they're towing the line and obeying the rules.
Is this an enforcement issue?
Are you referring to a residential, commercial?
Residential.
Yes, and I'll comment on that. That whole procedure has changed how we do things. You are right. There were a lot of loopholes in that process. That has been changed. So moving forward, that's been.
And it has. What about the business that didn't go through zoning either, that got built? I mean, we got it established. We got rules on that also.
A lot of things have changed. Correct. Yes, we've cleaned a lot of that up. So that is procedural, like you said.
I don't think that this
anything
not directly linked to that.
To that, right.
Another topic that we definitely do need to address
as, as far as like this goes with zoning though, like the zoning board for a while wants to update the zoning codes because they're extremely out to date and they're really struggling. So they've wanted a plan like this in order to guide so that they can actually update the zoning codes, which would save everybody a lot of time and energy and money because people are asking for things that don't fit into the vision, but we don't have our vision written down. So we're just asking people, developers, to dump more money into engineering and architecture work because we don't agree with what they're doing. Where if the zoning codes were outlined better and the developer would know walking in like what our zoning codes are a little clearer.
Yeah, I mean,
And I think Nick will agree with me, you definitely do not update the zoning code and then adopt a comprehensive plan.
Yes.
You do it the other way, so.
yeah, that's really,
This would help that process too.
yeah, it's definitely not fair. You can be extremely prescriptive or loose in your codes if you choose to be. It's so difficult to write a code and tap into a vision that hasn't been established. If you have not established a vision, you don't know community's policies or values, it's very difficult to write a code that will effectively achieve parcel by parcel or development by development what you're trying to do. That is what so I agree. I mean, the comprehensive plan is very important in establishing that vision. So when you do move forward in rewriting portions of your zoning code, it reflects that. Otherwise, we're working in communities where they're doing the zoning code at the same time as the comp plan, and it's very difficult because we say something, then they have to rewrite code, and it's like they go in an order, and I always recommend comp plan, then you move to zoning. Yeah, okay. Any other questions, comments?
If I could ask one on the goal setting, are those SMART goals that we will set? You mentioned that process.
So what we would do with the goals, I like to keep the goals, I guess they're general by nature. Their goal, something might be, make sure that everybody has access to parks and open space, and below that, the policies, the actionable items, that's what gets you to the achievable event. So if it's not necessarily like a benchmark or anything like that, I typically don't recommend those, but something that sort of sets the stage of, ultimately what are we trying to do in our residential areas. So there might be something specific to neighborhoods or specific to residential areas, and then below that will be more specific policies and recommendations that support getting to that goal. So it's vision, a series of goals, and then all the recommendations and policies below it that get you there. And that's kind of that funnel to get us to the vision.
One last thing, then, on your time schedule, I appreciate an aggressive time schedule, but do you find you're able to engage the citizens in the focus groups and get the information in the schedule you're proposing? Is that?
So I recommend, this was based off of the schedule that was in the original RFP, and I mean, we're already a couple of months into that schedule, so it wouldn't work. Like I said before, a typical comprehensive plan is somewhere between 12 to 18 months. I've even seen them go into 24. I don't think we need to do that. I think 6 months is aggressive. I think somewhere between 9 to 12 makes a lot of sense, and that's purely for getting the right amount of outreach and also giving everybody the review. I don't want someone to have 3 days to review something. I think everybody should have 2 weeks at a minimum to review any of these components or pieces. So it's not always just what it's going to take on our end to do it, but it's the amount of feedback and the amount of time that you want to give all of these different parties to be reviewing things. Certainly something we would work with staff work with the board on, but I think a 9-month is aggressive. I think we could do it in 9 months. We would have to be very targeted and very, very precise about how we're scheduling the outreach and timing it well, but I think that's doable. Somewhere to 9 to 12, we would be perfectly fine. And I wasn't really sure what the goal was. I mean, is the goal that this be adopted in March? I would tell you now that's probably too aggressive, but is the goal to be adopted by, X, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
I have some questions, man. Okay, so like on page 12 where you list the towns, I kind of looked up like the ones in Illinois, and you only have maybe a handful that is our size. Are those landlocked like we are?
A couple are.
We have like Oak Brook, Pine Green, South Beloit, Kenilworth, Mahomet, Davis Junction. Those are all under 7,000 lives. You have a couple that are even down to 2,000. We're about, 6,000? And so I'm just curious, are they landlocked?
There are some that are landlocked. I would call Pingree landlocked, Cary somewhat landlocked. I'm trying to think of others. I know, like, we did a plan down in Carbondale. I mean, I'm just trying to think of all the areas that are very much separated from, maybe like a metro region.
Yeah, and I'm looking more towards our size. I'm not looking at one that's 112,000 or 300,000 Chicago area. I don't even care about Chicago area. They're a whole another state. I'm more worried about our area and the towns that you guys worked on that are about our size.
Yeah.
And I'm just asking the question in my mind, are those landlocked like we are?
Wait, are you asking, have we worked in communities that are landlocked, or are you asking, have we worked in communities of your scale? Or both?
Both.
So both. Yeah, we've done both. I mean, we've worked in communities that are landlocked. We've worked in, and they vary in sizes. I mean, there's communities that are landlocked that are 80,000 people. There's communities that are landlocked that are 5,000 people. We've worked in small communities as well, so that 5 to 15,000 range. And I think, I mean, I don't have them listed out on here, but there's some communities that are larger in scale, but they're landlocked within their own region. And those all come with different challenges, but it's why the approach that we do here is we meet with staff, as we meet with the advisory board, are there things we need to tailor, are there things that we need to, fine tune because of that? I don't find that this outreach or that this approach is directly impacted by the scale of a community. We've done this approach of work in a community of 5,000, and we've done this approach of work in a community of, 200,000. And really all that changes is the venue size. And I think other than that, there are ways that you can go about facilitating the planning process that's very consistent. But even in here, there's things that we did do that's somewhat unique or different, and I think that was just because of our experience working here and knowing where we've been successful and knowing how we'd like to move forward.
Okay, so my other question is, okay, I know that this comprehensive plan, it's just a vision. It doesn't mean that we have to stick by it. We want to stick by it, we want to try to get as close as we can, especially if you're going to pay $95,000 for it. Are there any grants? Because since we got a transportation grant last time, is there any grants that could cut that cost that you're aware of?
I don't know of any grants like currently that you'd be able to seek for this. I know that, I think in the past when you've worked with Tri-County to apply for grants, those were very specific to transportation. This would not be heavily focused on transportation. This looks at all your systems, so I don't know that that's a resource you could use for this. I don't know. I guess I could point to Ray on that one. No, yeah. I know that there are other grants that communities have applied for, but off the top of my head, I can't think of any that you'd be able to apply for like in this process.
So when the 95,000, I'm just trying to figure out where we're going to come up with $95,000 at. So $95,000, obviously we wouldn't have to pay that up front, right? Or is that budget somehow?
Majority of that figure will come out of the 2020 budget. We discussed last board meeting that, there is some available this budget, but majority of that amount will come out of the 2020 budget. We will have to budget for that.
Okay.
Yeah, and if the project's over 9 months, I mean, our workload is over 9 months.
Okay.
Is the 2020 budget approved?
No.
You don't foresee any surprises in the cost? I mean, it's a flat
No, this is what
it is what it is.
Yeah, the only reason why it would change is if you came to us and said, we specifically want to look at this other plan or this other area, and we do amendments to our contracts for that. But no, we don't get into it and be like, oh my gosh, we didn't know this, or that.
It's taking longer than we thought.
Nope.
Or,
Yeah, that's on us.
I guess the only thing that I would really hope that we don't make our full focus on, like the transportation thing was, the last one, was parking. Because we all know that parking it's not here in the Heights. It will never be here in the Heights. It has never been here in the Heights. So I guess my thing is, let's not just make our main focus on this parking deal. Let's get out there and get whatever else we can get in here.
Yeah, it's not that parking's not an issue. It is an
issue.
But right, but I'm saying
it's always been an issue.
Yeah.
I've been here over 30 years. There's some that's been here over 50 years. It's always been an issue.
Yeah.
And I feel the last comprehensive, that's in the meetings that I went to, that's all we ever talked about was parking. And then we were going to redo the streets and do parallel, or we're going to do a turnaround. That's not going to solve the parking.
Yeah,
So
and this is,
that's why I don't want it to, don't waste our $95,000 on parking.
gotcha. Okay.
Okay, if you're ready to vote, Madam Clerk?
Trustee Carter?
Aye.
Trustee Mariscal?
Aye.
Trustee Kazan?
Aye.
Trustee Gett?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Aye.
Trustee DeVore?
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen, for a great presentation and being patient with us and answering all our questions, so thank
No,
you.
we appreciate the opportunity. We're extremely excited to kick off this project.
I don't know if Jeff wants to say a few
Yeah,
words. We
Jeff.
didn't hear from
Good.
Farnsworth Group, the representative from Farnsworth.
No, Nick did such a great job. The only thing, your landlocked comment, I think there's a great opportunity with what Trustee Kazam's doing with the river, and just,
Yeah, when we got that night, when we got the Capitol bill, I mean, that helped us,
So-
that helped us out a lot down there. So really, there's a lot that could happen down there with this vision, so that
so
vision.
I think there's kind of a paradigm shift that we all need to get into, that we're more than just this little village, this wonderful little village, but it's all these other opportunities and connections, and all the great things that Nick talked about. That's what the comprehensive plan's going to do with the public involvement, and really kind of stretch kind of the footprint of Peoria Heights, but still keep that village atmosphere. So,
And I did notice on their communities that Mahomet, Illinois was one of them. They're not that large. They're not very big. I think they're like
I can tell you.
6.
Yeah, there's
Thousand.
over 15 studies that we've done.
And they've done a lot. I mean, I'm familiar with having
Mohammed's
to,
7,200.
Yeah.
yeah, so they're
about our
not,
size.
so,
Thank
I
you very
mean,
much, Jeff, and thank
Thank
you,
you
Nick.
both.
thank
We're
you.
excited to be
So-
working with you both.
Okay, next is approval of ordinance 2019-1612, an ordinance amending the village code for the purpose of establishing regulations applicable to the display of mural signs in the business zones. Trustee Gett asked for a motion to approve that.
I make a motion to approve ordinance number 2019-1612.
No second?
Second?
Okay, go ahead,
Okay,
Trustee Gett.
basically, this is to, because they did such a nice job with the mural down there by Save a Lot, we want to make sure that nobody else just decides that they're going to paint wherever. And this is going to set up regulations that, what size it is, how much it can cover. It has to get approval for that before they put the mural, and it has to be signed by the property owner. You can't just, yeah, I just want to put it on this building. I'm just going to go ahead and do it, but the property owner has to be involved in it, and there's, put my eyes on, other ordinances here about what it can have. It doesn't, they're not going to be advertisement, correct, Chief?
Correct.
So this is just to make sure we don't have people just go crazy and paint buildings and residences. That's also in here about not just painting on somebody's house or residence, so kind of protect the homeowners and everything,
So was this all brought about because of that mural down there?
Yes, it was.
Was somebody else wanting to?
No, we just thought it would just to protect ourselves from graffiti type of murals, that we would update our sign ordinance, and that's kind of one reason that it was requested. I think it's a smart move.
Preventive medicine.
Yeah.
There was one business, I think, that did ask it.
Bella Grove? No, not Bella Grove, on the other side of the street. They have a business in Morton as well, and they have a
Yeah.
mural on the exterior of their building, and they loved what the Heights had done with the high school mural, and they wanted to do it, and what they proposed is beautiful, and then I think it just got us starting thinking about, like, well, we better just have an ordinance so people come in front of the
Right.
board to make sure that these are approved.
Yep. Without a
So chic, I think it
regulation,
was at best.
people say, I just painted my building. What do you mean? It's not a sign.
Right.
So this defines, you can't just paint your building in a way that, is effectively a sign without getting some sort of permission from the village, so.
Shall not be displayed on any fence nor any building or any portion of a building which is used for residential purposes.
Anyone else? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Wait a
Trustee
minute,
Carter?
hold on a minute.
1 second.
Down here. Section 3.
Okay.
And then it's all in.
I thought this only governed the businesses, but there's a residential clause in here. So are we saying that a resident couldn't, I don't know, paint a Trump 2020 on the side of their house?
That's exactly what it says. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's what the sign ordinance was, yes.
I mean, can we say that? I mean, wouldn't that become like freedom of speech?
Point me to,
9441 murals, first page, down the bottom, section A, it goes down to subsection 2.
I thought I remember seeing something in the news about someone painted a flag on the side of their house. And either a homeowners association or a local government
Yeah, it was
tried to
homeowners.
make them take it down. but
Homeowners.
It was determined
It was
that-
probably a homeowners
The
association.
homeowner association, yeah, I remember that.
this does only apply in the business zones. The reference to residential is, we're prohibiting painting murals on the residential portions of a commercial building.
Because we have resident and business bumping up, districts bumping up against each other.
A mixed
Right.
use.
I mean, so someone really could paint a mural on the side of their house, there's nothing we can do about that?
Well,
No.
yes, there is, but
If it's,
Do we have an ordinance on that?
we don't.
So then
If
I'm
it's-
good. If I wanted to put Trump
If you wanted-
2020
yeah, if you
on
wanna
my
paint the
house,
side of your
there's
house.
nothing anybody could do about it, right?
I don't think there would be anything we could do about it under the First Amendment,
Right.
even if we had an ordinance that said you can't do that.
Okay,
I think that they could do that.
yeah.
There's a difference between residential and business.
Yeah.
With business regulations in the downtown district, the time, place, and manner, we can get away with more under the First Amendment than we can at a private residence.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that this ordinance didn't govern private residences.
And it does not.
Okay.
It just governs, it just
make
protects
sure.
residents from being.
All right, anyone else?
Nope, put the Trump train right on my lawn. It's gonna be so friggin' big.
Trustee
Probably a bad
Carter?
example.
Sorry about that.
Yay or nay?
On the mural.
Yeah.
Nay? Yay. Oh, yay, okay. Trustee Mariscal?
Yay.
Trustee Kazan?
Yay. Aye.
Trustee Gett?
Yay.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Yes.
Yes, he said.
Okay.
I'm
Trustee DeVore?
Yes.
Okay, 6-0.
Okay, that passes. Next is Resolution 2019-10, a resolution approving the sale of vacant lots. Trustee Gett?
I make a motion to approve resolution number 2019-10.
And a second, please.
Second?
Go ahead, Trustee Gett.
This is just to approve the purchase, correct me if I'm wrong, of lots that are listed here, 5 lots for the sale. And
Questions, anyone?
Williams Brothers Construction. He's not here, so.
He was at the last meeting.
Right, he was at the last meeting, so this is just a formality, right? Just
Correct.
giving it.
And these are to be used for residential or residential.
That's what he said.
correct.
There's own residential, so yes.
And we're only giving him a certain time period and maybe 6 months, did I read that?
Correct.
Yeah, one
Extend
year,
ones.
1 year, and if he's moving diligently and doesn't meet the 1 year, he could get up to a 6-month extension as long as he's moving diligently.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And this was the guy who did the house on Columbus, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I went to the open house, and they did amazing things to that house.
Good.
I remember it before they bought it, and it was ran down. And it's a beautiful house now.
They did a great job.
Yeah,
Nice.
real nice job. So if they get anywhere close to that with these other properties, I think we're going to be better off, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Madam Clerk?
Trustee Carter?
Aye.
Trustee Mariscal?
Aye.
Trustee Kazan?
Aye.
Trustee Gett?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Aye.
Trustee DeVore?
Aye.
Okay, that passes. Next, approval of ordinance 2019-1613, an ordinance amending Title 8, Chapter 2A of the Village Code of the Village of Peoria Heights for the purpose of establishing water rates in the Village of Peoria Heights, Illinois. Trustee Carter?
I think at the last meeting, we had decided that, we'll raise the rates first 3 years, and then 2 years, no rate. Be 0 increase, to let the residents know we are working with them. We do need to raise the water rates to get the things that we need to get done in the next 3 to 5 years. If we don't do this, then we're gonna have to get the money elsewhere, and we don't want to do that. So, anybody have any questions? Sorry. No. Dave, you want to add anything or no? Okay.
Does the money for this have to come out of money generated by the waterworks? Like, the reason I'm asking is because I know that we're now charging residents for garbage, which has definitely helped, our budget. Is any of that money allowed to be put towards this to try to keep the increase on the water? Since we just had an increase by charging them for garbage, I'm just wondering if the money to do what they want to do has to come out of a certain bucket, basically. Does anybody know?
I think those are all policy decisions that
They
the board
are.
can make financially when you establish the budget. So the board can take revenues and spend them, unless they're restricted funds, however they choose to.
We can take general fund revenues and spend them on water or streets or garbage or anything that we want. We can't take fees that we charge for water and use those to pay the police pension or.
Right.
So straight the other way, but we
So
can
these
go that
fees that we're setting are dedicated water fees. If we still fall short, then we can use the garbage fees or sales tax revenue or any other general fund revenue to supplement water, but our water fees are dedicated to the water system.
Yeah, these fees will be earmarked towards the infrastructure that Dave explained last meeting. These are going to be project-driven and put towards that. They're not going to be just submit or throw into a general fund, so.
And actually, I think these don't, they cover what we're trying to do here very well, but there are additional possible needs that we'll have with the wells and different things that these fees won't cover. So it's not as if we could get this money somewhere else and it will be fine. You know what I'm saying? If that's what you're asking.
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
No, I think that we need to do this in order to cover the water requirements.
Yeah, this rate increase is basically going to keep us subsidized to keep moving forward with updates. If we don't do these updates, there'll be emergency updates that we'll have to do, and we'll have to have the money under emergency.
Infrastructure then? Is this?
Yeah, there's a water rate analysis sheet in the packet. There's a list, this is the capital improvement plan that I worked with Stephanie, a 5-year plan. There's a backhoe on there, a tractor, a well rehab, and then 2 water main projects on Lake in Constantine and Marietta. That's the proposal to get, these rate increases where it would fund.
What kind of backhoe do we have now? Is it old?
Our current one we use is 10 years old. Then our 2010, our backup is 20 years old.
So we have to vote this in now, is that right?
Tonight, yeah. It has to go into effect the 1st of December.
Because the last contracts is
And
up.
then are residents notified of this increase?
I would believe so. I don't know, like, if each resident is, like, given notice. I'm sure it's probably something that could be done, like, on a water bill or something. I don't know in the previous practice how it was notified. By the water bill. Yeah, if I had to assume, it was probably just, like, stamped on the water bill. But I don't have no way of, I don't know for sure. That could be done, I would assume.
Anyone else?
Yeah, so I think one of the downsides of having a publicly owned utility is that we're on the hook for the infrastructure, which is basically what the justification that was used for these increases, is that we had these infrastructure needs. What was it? A water main on Lake Avenue, Constantine, Marietta, and Moneta, a well rehab, and then a backhoe replacement. If we're using those capital projects and purchases as a justification for these rate increases, shouldn't those rate increases expire once these projects are completed?
But there's always projects that need to be updated.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but I think a general conversation needs to be had on how we bill for water. When I spoke with Stephanie, she said that the water trend usage is trending downwards, that people use less water now than they do.
Yeah, water conservation is at its highest, yeah.
Right. So I think we need to have the discussion on how we bill for water. Is this the most effective way? But if we're telling the people of Peoria Heights, we need to raise your rates, these are the reasons, then I think those rates should only be used for those capital projects. If we want to go to the people and say, hey, you're using less water, we need to charge more for water because you're using less, I think that's a conversation we can have, but that's not the conversation we've had.
Well, I think if we could tell the future on some infrastructure needs, and if in a perfect world, we wouldn't have anything else after we complete these projects, and we didn't have any other bills, I think that's a great example. But I think that's one reason that I think last meeting we rolled out the last 2 years of this proposal was 0-0, and saying that hopefully we're not going to have anything major, so we're going to raise it 0-0. Now, if we do have other issues, we're going to have, the board will have to revisit that. But I think that was, without telling the future, we really don't know that. But I understand your concept, but, maybe we'll be lucky and a lot of, some of these but knowing the Heights as I know it, I know that we have a lot of issues. A lot of things that have been
very
ignored,
old infrastructure.
Ignored for years that, that's it's in front of us today. And this is one option, and that's one reason I proposed the extra 2 years on the water increases to 0-0. I thought that was some good gesture on our part to say that, hopefully we won't have any major big projects after we get through these first 3 years.
Yeah, let me say, I don't want to give the impression that the water department is failing or that we are in extreme trouble, but if we continue ignoring the infrastructure issues, 10, 15 years down the road, we're going to be in extreme trouble, and we're going to be coming to you for $100,000, and we're going to be standing around going, how are we going to pay for this?
Yeah, no, and I understand. I don't want to ignore the infrastructure needs, but I don't want to take on projects of the magnitude that you've sent to us, but then charge people for those projects indefinitely.
I think that it wasn't put in just for projects, though. It was kind of both, right?
No.
Like, I took it as like, we're raising the rates because, yes, we need to do these projects, but because there's gonna be things that keep coming.
That was a discussion I had with Stephanie. That's her concerns, that we aren't charging enough basically to keep up. But that's not, we didn't have that discussion amongst the board. We just talked about these capital projects and the need to fund these capital projects.
It was brought up that we don't know what the future will bring. It could be something else that could pop up, and we need to have the money to take care of it, because when catastrophe happens with the water, I mean, there's no warning. It just happens. And these pipes and everything are how old? What? 100 years old?
80, 100 years old, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we didn't fall upon that grant on Atlantic, that would have cost the village, I mean, we got lucky finding that grant.
These items that are on this plan in front of you are a very small snippet of what needs to take place in the future to remain sustainable. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There is.
This is really just the most immediate. And
Yeah, these are the most immediate, yeah.
Isn't exclusive to Peoria Heights. I mean.
This is not a Peoria Heights, but this is a.
This entire community was founded at in a certain era, and they put in the water structure, and
Right.
so it's just.
And like I said last meeting, at no fault of no one, the water infrastructure is underground. Nobody sees it. Nobody wants to pay for it because nobody sees the end result. It's all underground, so everybody ignores it. And now we're here where it's like, now what do we do?
I'm not disputing the need for the infrastructure. I'm disputing the way we bill the residents for the service. I think we all agree that, well, at least Stephanie was in agreement, that our revenues are decreasing because of water use, it's decreasing. So the way we're doing it now is every couple of years, we're going to have a huge increase just to keep up with the infrastructure needs. Shouldn't we be charging like a flat rate that covers not only the cost of providing the service, but also the cost of the infrastructure maintenance?
Well, the problem is the flat rate that we're at now is not enough to cover that. That's why we have to have these increases. And that's why
So you're saying we should increase more just via the flat rate?
I think if you're on a fixed income, it's easier to plan out what your costs are going to be, not wait a year or every 3 years and have increases in your basic services. That we should have a more strategic plan on how we maintain the infrastructure on the Heights. And this kind of just Band-Aids it. And that underscores that we're only going to say zero for 2 years, because we know there's going to be yet more costs. Why not address this issue now?
Well, that's just the historic approach that we've taken. Now, if we want to go to a larger plan and a larger increase, we can talk about it, but this is what we proposed a few meetings ago we've been discussing. But I mean, the board can decide to go a different route. If you want to go with a higher rate, you want to go with a longer rate, that's always an option. This was just presented, and I threw an option out there that it was to go to 0-0, because at that time, it was brought up that these are too high. How can we explain to the residents that we want to lower this? And I said, well, what about adding 2 years to 0-0? It was just a recommendation. Now, if the board feels differently, then I'm open.
We need to get this voted on tonight and passed tonight so it can be effective by end of December, correct?
December 1st is the...
December 1st?
Yeah.
So it needs to get, and we can always revisit this and change it if we want to.
But the higher
I would
rates.
encourage this to be really an annual. Most of the communities that I represent deal with this on an annual basis, so I don't want anybody to have the misconception that we're passing this and we're not going to look at water rates until 2024. That's not, that's not
how we
really
do it
what-
now.
We look at it annually.
Yeah, it has to be annually, otherwise it's...
How about we do
This
this
is
every 3
our best
years?
5-year projection as of today, but next year we could find out.
Yes.
We planned for 3 years, but every year it comes back up for review.
Yes.
Even though we're in that 3-year plan.
We still review.
You can't just,
Right.
because something might pop up, you might have to add, or maybe we'll be able to decrease, but you just got to, every year,
we will
revisit it, just like we're going to revisit the cost of the trash and everything. We always got to revisit it because you got to tweak it. It's not...
We'll be revisiting this next year, even though if you pass it.
Would your recommendation be that we could do a more comprehensive, analysis on the water rates?
Yeah, I would. I would like to see, we need these infrastructure improvements. I think we're all in agreement on that. But I would like to sunset these new rates at the completion of these projects and come up with a comprehensive plan that funds the water department long-term.
So is that something that you can do, Dave?
Well, I think we could set the rates for, we could amend this, set the rates for 1 year. I don't see any problem with that. And then if you're committed to this, if everyone's committed to this, then have a policy discussion on the entire water business. And
Yeah, I just know Stephanie was concerned about the trending, the water use is trending downwards and has been for some time, and with it, our revenue.
well, and that's probably due to efficiencies, but, fewer people
Water,
too.
water conservation, yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, I hope we reverse, I want to encourage conservation of water, but I hope that we increase water usage by bringing more people and families back here to the village. So I'm open to an amendment that would set the rates for a year and then come back if you want, if the board chooses to do that. If you have the support, Trustee Weisenberg. So I'm open to an amendment if that's what we want to do.
So we would amend it to only approve a 1-year increase pending review.
Historically, the village has set these rates for 5 years, and I wasn't aware of that until recently, but we can
3
change
years.
policy anytime. So if the board, thank you. If the board wanted to set the rates for 1 year tonight, and then come back after the first of the year and revisit all of this, but I would hope we would look at all the infrastructure needs, the way we're charging.
I agree. It's just more predictable, in my opinion.
Is that something you can do, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, my concern is that I'm not sure how predictable. Yeah, I think it's doable.
This won't affect you moving forward on some of your projects then, knowing that you just only have the 1%.
We're not bonding for any of this, so
Right.
No.
we don't need to know the revenue stream yet. I think this gives you the ability to set the rates for the first year out, but we need to be diligent in coming back and revisiting this.
Yeah.
And
Well, what are you setting the rates to for 1 year?
We're just going to follow this
Start year
plan, but
one.
it's just, yeah.
Year one.
9%.
9%, 7%?
9%. 9%.
So you're going to do 9% this year?
Well, I don't have an amendment yet, so.
Yeah. Well, that's the
Well, we're going to
first
talk
year.
about, we got to talk about what
Which-
the amendment even is,
9%.
right? Or am I
If
lost?
someone wants to offer one, then, we can talk about
I
it.
make a motion to amend this to 9% for the first year
Mike.
we revisit.
my initial thoughts were just to sunset these rates
So just,
in 3 years, or at the end of this plan that Dave submitted. At the end of these capital projects, we sunset the rates as they are on 11/30/2019.
What do you mean by sunset?
Sunset, they will revert
back to what they are today.
Okay,
So once we've gotten these projects taken care of, which is the pressing concern, because they're on our list here,
Okay, but then what about the next concerns that in the next 5 or 10 years after that?
and this time we would determine how we bill for water. If doing the increases every 3 years is the right way, or do we go with a more traditional model of just a flat rate?
Well, now I follow you. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. But
Yeah,
I would be, as long as we don't kick the can down the road, for wait for 3 years, and then we're in a crisis mode about other infrastructure. So I was thinking that you wanted to get into this right away.
Okay, so I know we're discussing it here, but I am not for that. I'm just not. You cannot predict what's going to happen in the future. I get that. But you do have to plan for the future. And what we're doing is we're just planning. We're planning what needs to be done and how we need to do the rates to get to where we need to be at the end of that year. Now, granted, there's some things on here that he's put on here that's priority, but you also you got another well that you're gonna have to look into that's gonna cost, I don't even know, maybe $300,000. It's only running not even 50%, right?
That's well number 9.
But the other
That's on
wells-
here.
Well,
The other well's pumping dirty water, and until that is investigated, I'd have
So we
no
don't
idea.
even know what
No,
that's-
the initial investigation cost is about $20,000, but after that, it could be
we don't know.
$5,000, it could be $100,000,
Right.
yeah, I don't know.
So, I mean, I get that you don't want to have the residents pay any more. I don't want to pay any more. I don't want any more on that friggin' water bill. And you can take the garbage off, as far as I'm concerned, and let us pay the garbage, and then let's deal with this. But we just paid $95,000 to give us somebody to tell us what we're going to do with our village. But these rates, I think we need to have a plan on a percentage. I mean, it's a slow percentage, so people, I would prefer to have a slow percentage increase than give me $50 increase now, and then a year later, we're gonna look at it again. Because you're gonna look at it again.
With this plan, yeah.
And you're gonna raise the rates. Because there's just there's not anywhere, we don't have any more room to put residents. That's what we're fighting right now, is putting residents in the empty lots. I mean, granted, we got 5, but they ain't gonna be up and running for another couple years, I would guess. I would guess probably 2021, we might have residents in those buildings. Hopefully with all the new businesses coming on and the hotel coming in here, they're gonna use some water. I would hope that would increase it. So maybe in this time frame, we won't have to increase it anymore. In 5 years, we would know. You see what I'm saying? Because that should be done in the next couple years, the hotel. That's the only really big thing. And the loft, well, it's just about, I don't even know how many's going in that loft, 5 or 10, but.
Is it correct to say that if we adopt this plan as it's presented this evening, we will review it annually, and we may make changes to that? And in addition to that, within this year, within the next 365 days, Trustee Weisenberg or Trustee Carter can examine this proposal that you're suggesting? And then when it comes up for review in a year, I mean, would that cover all the bases?
I think that's a good idea. We pass this, and then every year we review it, we can change it every year. If we decide it doesn't need to be done, we can change it, but this has to
Does that-
be.
Just so
Does that-
everybody's
can't
clear, we
even
don't have to
imagine
wait
this.
until
It's never
next
been done that way.
November to talk about water rates again. We could start talking about now a plan for the future, even if you adopt this ordinance. This is not binding, this is not etched in stone,
Right.
for 3 years or 5 years. So by adopting this tonight, you're not foreclosing what Trustee Weisenberg is suggesting ought to be, sort of a change in approach going forward.
Dave can come before us every
I think that
meeting.
makes it a lot simpler for us to understand what we need to do this evening.
Dave can come before us every meeting and give us an update how things are going, correct?
Going fantastic.
So,
Yeah,
question for you.
I've
Does
contacted
Denmark
her.
have its own water company? Or do they do like American Water?
We do American and the garbage and recycling's all on the water bill.
It just doesn't ever happen.
And you pay a flat fee for water?
Yeah, on usage, and I pay between $75 and $95 a month for garbage, water.
Does that charge stay pretty static?
Yeah,
Never changes?
it fluctuates depending on usage.
All right, I haven't heard any amendments, so I'm going to call the question. Madam Clerk?
Trustee Carter?
Are we voting on?
As is.
Aye.
Trustee Mariscal?
Aye.
Trustee Kazim?
Aye.
Trustee Gett?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
No.
Trustee DeVore?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That passes. We would be at the Heights Proclamation in support of the Donovan Sculpture Garden. Trustee Weisenberg, I'd ask, you want to read this proclamation?
Yeah, do I have to? Do you want me to explain what this is for the other board?
Go ahead, please, yes.
So we were approached by a group that I'm working with for our support for a project they're working on for Donovan Park. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Wandel Sculpture Park in Urbana. Mayor and I attended a kind of a tour of this park, but they're wanting to bring this concept to Donovan Park, which is basically within walking distance of some of our residents here in the Heights. It's totally privately funded, and basically they're just looking for a proclamation of support from the village board that this is going to bring a unique attraction to our area here in central Illinois.
So would you make a motion, Trustee Weisenberg,
Sure.
to support this resolution and proclamation?
I make a motion in support of the Donovan Sculpture Garden Project at Donovan Park.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Would you like to read that so everybody knows what we're voting on?
Sure. Whereas the village of Peoria Heights is a virtual city on a hill, and the eyes of its citizens and all of central Illinois are upon it. Whereas Peoria Heights is the center of a thriving and active restaurant and entertainment district. Whereas Peoria Heights has within its boundaries and promotes important nature and recreational opportunities with the Forest Park Nature Center and Rock Island Greenway. Whereas Peoria Heights is home to the magnificent Grandview Drive that Teddy Roosevelt proclaimed the world's most beautiful drive. And whereas Peoria Heights is now becoming a center for the visual arts, having 6 internationally known sculptor Bruce White works within its business district, but also its expanding citizen participation, art events, and public art appreciation in general. Now, therefore, on this occasion, as the Peoria Park District considers preliminary steps to establish an art sculpture garden at Donovan Park, the Peoria Heights Village Board and Mayor Michael Phelan support the Peoria Park District and its efforts to establish the public sculpture garden as an important community asset. The Village of Peoria Heights commends the efforts of the Peoria Park District for doing this. The Village of Peoria Heights is honored to add our support to move this project and all of central Illinois forward.
Thanks for all your work on that. So for the record, then, if Madam Clerk, if you would call the roll on its support of this effort by the Peoria Park District.
Trustee Carter?
Aye.
Trustee Mariscal?
Aye.
Trustee Kazim?
Aye.
Trustee Gett?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Aye.
Trustee DeVore?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And Trustee Weisenberg, you've agreed to take that to the Park District meeting. All right, thank you for doing that. We'd be at Treasurer's Report.
I got a letter for you.
Okay. Ready? All right.
Madam Clerk, if you'd read that.
As of the end of October, there was $2,493,712.45 in the village controlled accounts. And there was $980,423.02 in the water control accounts.
I would ask for a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee Carter? Aye. Trustee Mariscal? Aye. Trustee Kazan?
Aye.
Trustee Gett?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Aye.
Trustee DeVore?
Aye.
Okay, and that passes. Trustee Gett,
I move to adjourn.
is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, we're adjourned.
Letter.
This is it.